Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel for yet another cool tech video. My name is Sungjin Park at Spark Tech, and today we are taking a look at this cool laptop from Asus. This is the Zenbook 14 OLED or UX3402ZA, which doesn't make any sense to me. And this is a 14-inch thin and light laptop that comes with a powerful 12th gen Intel i5 or i7 P processor, 2.8K 90Hz OLED display, and large 75 watt hour battery. And the best part is that it doesn't break the bank. And it is good looking too, as you can see. With that said, let's begin. The Zenbook 14 OLED comes with a Intel 12th Gen i5 1240p or i7 1260p processor, 8 or 16 gigs of LPDDR5 memory, which is not upgradable, 2.8K 90Hz OLED display, which is either non-touch or touch-enabled, and up to 1 terabyte of PCIe Gen 4 SSD, and that is upgradable. And the battery is large at 75 watt hour. The starting price of this laptop is $749 in the US, which is great value for money. So my configuration comes with the 1240p processor, 16 gigs of RAM, 512 gigabytes of SSD storage, and non-touch OLED 2.8K 90Hz display. While this configuration is not available in the United States, I guess this configuration should cost $1,000 or $1,100, given that the same configuration is available in the UK for just shy of £1,200. Let's take a look at the exterior first. The chassis, as you can see, is made of aluminum, which feels very solid, durable, and smooth. It's the kind of quality that you expect from this kind of laptop in this price range. The Zenbook 14 OLED is available in two colors. The Ponder Blue, which is what we're seeing here, and Aqua Celadon, which is not available in any country as of this review. The lid has an abstract and very subtle pattern, which I really love. It's the kind of design that I don't expect from Asus. It's one that you can safely take with you to a local cafe without worrying about looking too nerdy, which is a good thing. Opening up the lid, you can see something that I'm very glad to see again. Physical function keys. Of course, these keys are not full size, probably too small, but they are physical and they work just fine. There are dedicated camera and microphone controls as well, with little nice orange indicators, which are really good for Zoom calls. You know that if your microphone or camera is on or off with these indicators, which is great. And the power button on the right side doubles as a fingerprint sensor, and that sensor supports Windows Hello, which means that you can use this power button to log in like this. So the keyboard is great. I mean, the keyboard is decent. The keycaps are fine and smooth, but these keys feel a little too mushy and membraney, if there is a word, when typing. But that is subjective, but I'm pretty sure that most people will like this keyboard. And one thing that I really have to say is that Asus got the arrow keys right. This laptop has a special hinge structure which Asus calls ergo lift, which lifts up the bottom chassis, the bottom part of the laptop, as you open up the lid. And that makes for a better typing angle and better cooling performance because you have more surface area and you can take more air in when the laptop is lifted up. And the hinge opens by 100 degrees, which is useful if you buy a touch-enabled version of this laptop, which is currently unavailable. When it comes to the trackpad, it's pretty large and responsive, and it feels just as smooth and pleasant as trackpads on other laptops. You can do all the multi-finger gestures as you can expect, but I don't necessarily like how it sounds when clicked because it's kind of loud and clanky, but it's just fine. It's perfectly serviceable. But there's one interesting trick that this trackpad can do, which is that if you tap and hold on this icon here, then you can turn it into a numpad. Yeah, virtual numpad on your trackpad. I mean, it works, but I don't use this feature, this virtual numpad too often because I'm not a numpad guy, and this feature is kind of finicky at times, but it kind of works. So if you need a numpad, it's there for you. So now moving on to the display. The Zenbook 14 OLED, as the name suggests, comes with an OLED display. The resolution is 2880 by 1800 and it runs at 90 Hz. You might say that's not a 4K, it's not 4K, but it is high resolution enough that you don't basically see the individual pixels. So letters on this screen is super sharp, which is great. And because it's 90 Hz, things are very smooth. Scrolling on this monitor, this display is very smooth. Even though it is not super fast 120 Hz or 144 Hz like on other gaming laptops, it still is very fast because OLED pixels just work faster than LCD pixels, which are liquid crystals. They are just slower than OLED pixels. So even though it is 90 Hz, it is super smooth, possibly feels smoother than other fast LCDs. Asus is quoting 600 or 550 nits for its maximum brightness, but that is peak brightness, not typical maximum brightness, and that is 400 nits. 400 nits of brightness is still bright, even though it is not too bright, so it's pretty good display. When it comes to color gamut, it supports 100% of the DCI P3 wide color gamut, meaning it should be good for photo or video editing and watching content on YouTube. But there's one caveat, which is that this screen is quite reflective and glossy, meaning that you will see some reflections of yourself or objects nearby you. That is kind of annoying when you really need to focus on the content on the display. Maxing out brightness help reduce that reflections, but still they are there. On top of the screen, it has 720p webcam along with two microphones. They are just fine and good enough for Zoom calls. But the camera doesn't support Windows Hello, but that's kind of fine because we have a fingerprint sensor. The speakers are there to make horrible noise. They sound very muffled and the lows are missing. To remove the bottom panel, you need to unscrew several Torx T5 screws and 2 Phillips ones that are unfortunately hidden below the rubber feet. Not much is upgradable here except for the SSD. The Zenbook 14 OLED has a lot of ports for its size. A 5GB USB-A port, one HDMI 2.0 port, 2 Thunderbolt 4 port, micro SD card slot, and headphone jack. Now let's talk about the performance. Starting with the SSD, it's pretty fast because it's PCIe Gen 4. In Cinebench R23, it scored around 1400 in single core and around 8000 in multi-core depending on the room temperature. The Zenbook was really hot and seriously loud, partly because of the limited cooling system that only has one fan. But with more reasonable and optimized settings, the laptop was a lot quieter, but still a little too hot. At least the performance penalty wasn't too much. But don't worry. If you do light tasks on this laptop, which is what you should be doing on this Zenbook 14 OLED, this laptop can be really quiet and warm. You know, I cannot say it is cool, but at least the design is cool. And this laptop is not designed for gaming, but it can play some older games like League of Legends pretty well. However, it doesn't play more graphically intensive games as well like Battleground. So last time when I reviewed the XPS 13 Plus, a lot of you asked how the laptop performed in video and photo editing. So in this review, I'm going to show you how this laptop Asus Zenbook 14 OLED performs in video and photo editing. First, let's do some photo editing. This is the Guru photo editing tool, Lightroom Classic. I'm going to load some photos, about 60 raw photos that I took with the Sony A7R Mark II. Each file is just 80 megabytes. That's a lot. Even though the files are old, I mean the camera is old, but the files are pretty difficult to handle. And even modern latest cameras are not as many megapixels as this camera is. So this is going to be very taxing on many computers. Let's import these photos first. Okay, that was fast. So let's develop one photo from here. What about, let's do this one. Okay, zooming in and out. I mean, it's pretty good, I think. Not too bad. Zooming in and out is just fine. Let's change white balance a little, which is horrible. Change exposure, works just fine. Contrast, let's add some contrast. I mean, yeah, it's taxing on the computer pretty much, so the fan is working pretty hard, but it's working pretty well. What about highlights? Bring down highlight. The photo is getting worse, but just don't think about it. I mean, ignore that. It's just for technical demonstration, not for artistic demonstration. Okay, I'm going to make as many edits as possible so that this computer somehow slows down, but that's not happening. It's doing really well. And then let's add some lens correction because it's shot on a wide angle lens. Enable profile correction. Yeah, it's working just fine. What about vignetting? Okay, now it's slowing down just a little, and not really. That's, yeah, it's just fine. So what I want to do this time is I'm going to copy all the edits that I made in this photo and then apply that to all other photos and see how long it takes. I often do this. Develop settings, paste settings. Okay, that was fine. Yeah, looking good. Let's export these files to JPEG. Export. I'm gonna set up fan profile to performance mode as well as Windows performance settings to power mode, excuse me, to performance as well. I'm gonna set stopwatch here, start. Let's go. The fan's working really hard and making quite a bit of noise. So it took 2 minutes and 5 seconds to export 48 megapixel RAW files to JPEG with a bit of editing applied. That is pretty fast, I think. And I think photo editing on this laptop is definitely doable. So basically, I think if you are a hobby photographer like I am, then you should be fine with this laptop. This time I want to test this laptop's video editing capabilities. I'm currently using a Premiere Pro 2022. One thing that I have to tell you before we do this test is that I'm a Premiere guy. I'm not a Premiere guy. I use Final Cut all the time. So what I can show you here with Premiere, which is the tool many people use on Windows, is kind of limited. So I'm going to do very basic things to see if it, handles things pretty well. But at least the file that I'm going to use is going to be very challenging because the video I'm going to use is the one I used for the last video that I uploaded, which was the review of XPS 13 Plus. The video file is in H.265 format. It's 4K 422 10-bit, which is very difficult to handle for many thin and light laptops like this one. But let's see. It's scrubbing pretty well, and it's not even a half resolution. I think it's in full playback resolution, but it's scrubbing kind of fine and plays just fine. Let's do some color correction because this file is a log file. Here, color wheel, I'm going to bring down shadow just a little, bring up highlights. I think it's a little under exposed, so let's add some exposure. Let's do it again. Where is it? Color wheels, shadow. Okay, highlight, bring down midtone. This is weird. Okay, it's a lot better. And then let's add some saturation here. Okay, it plays just fine. But the fan is working really hard, making quite a bit of noise, but it's playing just fine, scrubbing just fine. Again, the file it is handling is pretty difficult to handle, but it's pretty good. Let's add some title here. And what about this? Okay, here, okay, playback is just fine. Let's put some logo here. It stutters a little bit, but it's playing just fine, I think. How about a low third? So I've just added low third and a logo, which is going to be a little challenging, but it's doing pretty well, I think. This time, let's export this sequence and see how long it takes. It's about 6 minutes and 34 minutes. 6 minutes and 34 seconds. Let's export this project. I'm gonna use that this YouTube setting and see how long it takes. I'm going to start my stopwatch and go. Okay, it's done. It took about 7 minutes to export a 6 minute and 40-second project, which is not bad. So what I make of this is that if you are a casual video editor, so if you do some vlogging or very basic editing, video editing, like basic color grading, adding some titles, I think it should be pretty good. If you do more than that, I think you should look somewhere else, because this laptop is not intended for hardcore video editing. For people who don't do much video editing, who only do something very basic, it's going to be fine, I think. Great. Lastly, let's talk about the battery life. It's got a very large 75 watt hour battery. That is pretty large, and basically as large as it gets in this laptop category. Thanks to that, this Zenbook 14 OLED's battery life isn't too bad, because I consistently got 8 to 9 hours of battery time, which is pretty great. But if you want even more battery life out of this laptop, one thing that you can do is dialing refresh rate down to 60 Hz. That way you could get probably 1 more hour or 2 on battery, but I don't really wanna go back to 60 Hz, because 90 Hz display is too smooth, too beautiful, buttery smooth, and I'm already spoiled. So did you like the Zenbook 14 OLED? I really like this laptop because not only does it give you great value for money, it's just a good, decent laptop. I mean, it can run really hot and loud, but considering that this laptop is designed for general people doing, everyday things, I don't think that is too much of a problem. It should be great for most people. That's it. Thank you for watching my video yet again, and I'll see you in the next video.